Her true story. From Colorado. My children said, "You've done enough," and sent me to a nursing home. So I bought the land their house sits on. They gave me silence. I gave them notice. "Mama, seriously, you have done enough. At this point, you're just wearing us out." I was folding a dish towel when my daughter-in-law said it. Her voice was sharp, clipped, like she had rehearsed it, like it had been sitting behind her teeth for weeks. My son stood nearby, silent, his eyes fixed on the floor the way they used to be when he was 10 years old and got caught skipping school. But this time, it wasn't guilt I saw. It was relief, like something heavy was about to be lifted off his shoulder. She didn't stop there. The nursing home in Boulder has 3 hot meals a day and weekly housekeeping. It's cleaner than this place. And at least there, someone will watch you full-time. You need to be somewhere you can rest and rot in peace in that dog cage, not cluttering up our life. I paused, pressed my fingers into the soft, faded towel, and willed them not to shake. My name is Ruth. I am 78 years old. I used to be a second-grade teacher. I baked pies for the school auctions, ran the PTA, ironed my husband's shirts until the cancer took him away in the fall of 2001. I sold the only home I'd ever owned to help my son and his wife build theirs. A big white house near Fort Collins with vaulted ceilings and a wraparound porch. I thought I would be welcome in it. I thought I was building a place where 3 generations could live and laugh together. I thought wrong. I kept my voice steady as I folded the towel and placed it in the drawer, then said, calmly, "When are you sending me to Boulder?" She blinked, surprised by my composure. "Tomorrow. We already filled out the intake. They have a room ready." I nodded. No fight, no begging, no tears. Just a quiet nod from a woman who had finally read the fine print on the life she had written for others. That night, I packed my belongings. Not much to take. A few sweaters, a photo of my late husband, my wedding ring, which no longer fit, but I still carried it in a velvet pouch, my Bible, and the deed. The old dusty folder with the property papers I'd never thrown away. I kept it in the bottom of my suitcase. My hands trembled a little when I zipped the bag, not from fear, from memory. I remembered the first time I bathed my son when he had chicken pox. I remembered sitting up all night, sewing his Halloween costume. I remembered paying for his college textbooks when his part-time job wasn't enough. I remembered everything he seemed to have forgotten. The next morning, they loaded my suitcase into the back of the car. My granddaughter didn't say goodbye. She had gymnastics practice. My grandson barely looked up from his phone. I suppose they weren't told the truth. Or maybe they were. Maybe it was easier to say, "Grandma needed a break," than "Grandma was in the way." We drove in silence for most of the ride. My son kept his eyes on the road. His wife scrolled through her phone. I stared out the window. The sky was wide and gray, the mountains in the distance dusted with snow. It was January, cold, familiar. When we pulled up to the facility, it was nicer than I expected. Glass doors, smiling receptionist, a fireplace in the lobby, with chairs arranged like someone still believed in conversation. "We'll visit when we can," my son said, not looking at me. I nodded again. That was all I could offer him now. Nods. The intake nurse was kind. She asked me about allergies, medications, diet preferences. She asked if I wanted a television. I said, "No." I have enough voices in my head already. They left before lunch. No hugs, no warmth, just the soft hiss of the automatic door closing behind them. The sound of something permanent. I sat on the edge of the bed in my new room. It smelled like bleach and lavender. There was a window, a desk, a shelf already holding books I would never read. I looked around and tried to feel thankful. It was clean. It was safe. But it was not home. That afternoon, I asked the nurse for a copy of the Wi-Fi password and called my lawyer. His name was Gerald. He was 91 years old and still sharper than a tack. "Ruth," he said. "Good God, it's been ages. What brings you to me?" "My kids just dropped me off at a nursing home," I said. He paused. "You want to sue?" "No," I said calmly. "I want to remind them who owns the land." Silence on the other end. "You never transferred the title?" he asked. They never asked. They were too busy decorating the inside of a house they did not technically own. Gerald chuckled. "Well, you always were a quiet genius." "I want the paperwork filed," I said. "No drama, just legal notice. And when the time is right, I want to serve them a reminder. Not in court, just in writing, with my name on top. I'll handle it personally." He said that night, I slept like I had not in years, in a stranger's room with strangers all around. But for the first time, I felt like I was back in control of something they thought I had lost. My voice. Before, I was a burden. I was everything. I taught second grade for 33 years. I was the one who stayed late after school with the kids who needed extra help, and came in early for the ones whose parents dropped them off too soon. I baked banana bread for every staff meeting and bought crayons with my own money when the school budget ran dry. I knew every child by name, even the ones who only passed through my classroom for a semester. They still write me letters, some with kids of their own now. My husband, William, was a quiet man with big hands and a tender heart. He died of pancreatic cancer 3 years after we both retired. We had plans, small ones, nothing grand. A road trip to Yellowstone, a garden behind our cottage in Estes Park. But cancer does not honor calendars. It comes like a thief in the night and leaves you with empty chairs and unopened maps. After he passed, I stayed in the house for a while, the one with blue shutters and a front porch swing. I kept it spotless, as if he might come back and be proud of it, but the silence got too loud. I went days without hearing my own voice spoken aloud. So I decided, maybe it was time to be closer to family. My son, Thomas, had just announced he and his wife were expecting their second child. They had land. Nothing built yet, just acres and ideas. The economy was tight, and loans were harder to get. So when I told them I wanted to sell my place and help, they looked at me like I had handed them a miracle. I sold the cottage. Every square foot of it was a memory. I watched the moving truck drive away with the last of my husband's books, and the armchair where I used to read to my grandchildren. It hurt, but I told myself it was for something greater. For family. For a future that still had room for me. I wired the money, nearly every cent I had left after paying off medical bills and funeral costs. I told them, use it for the house. I don't need much, just a little room in the back, somewhere I can drink tea in the morning and kiss my grandbabies goodnight. They called me generous, saintly. You saved us, they said, and I believed them. The house went up quickly. Cream siding, big kitchen, hardwood floors, and a fireplace that turned on with a switch. They picked out every detail. I just smiled and said, "It looks beautiful." At first, everything felt right. I moved into a small guest room while they finished the basement. My grandson would crawl into my bed with picture books. My granddaughter would help me make brownies, sneaking chocolate chips when she thought I wasn't looking. I cooked dinner a few nights a week, helped with laundry, ran errands. Nothing big, just useful. I wanted to be useful. But time changes people, and usefulness has an expiration date. As the house settled, so did the roles. I started hearing things I had never heard before. "Mum, Can you not rearrange the pantry? I know you're trying to help, but it makes it hard to find stuff. Maybe take a step back on the discipline, okay? They're just kids. They don't need your old school rules. I love that you're always here, but sometimes we need space, you know? So I took up less space. I stopped asking to babysit. I only ate meals when invited. I waited to be spoken to. When they wanted to remodel the basement into a guest suite, I offered to move into the sunroom. It's bright, I said. I like it. No one argued. By the second year, I stopped feeling like part of the home. I felt more like a placeholder, like furniture no one wanted to throw away, but no longer used. And still, I stayed quiet, because I loved them, because I remembered rocking my son to sleep, because I believed, somewhere inside, they still saw me as more than a leftover. But I was wrong. I gave them my home, my savings, my hands, and my time. I gave them my name on the deed, and slowly they gave me silence. At first, they gave me the guest room upstairs. It had a small window that faced the driveway, and a soft green quilt I had sewn when Thomas was still in high school. They called it my space, said I could decorate however I liked. I hung a picture of William by the lamp. I lined the shelf with my old books. I made it feel like home, or at least the closest thing to it. But things change. It started small. One day, they said they were hosting a friend for the weekend and asked if I could temporarily sleep downstairs in the basement. Just a few nights. They said the guest room has a better mattress, they said, and we want to make a good impression. I didn't argue. I packed my nightgown and moved into the unfinished room below. Concrete floors, a pull-out couch that creaked, no windows, no clock, just a lamp with a flickering bulb, and a smell that reminded me of damp laundry. The weekend came and went, but I never moved back upstairs. They never mentioned it, never invited me back to my room. The friend left, and that was it. My space became their spare space, and mine became invisible. Meals changed too. In the early months, I ate with them, set the table, passed the rolls, listened to my grandson tell stories about recess, and my granddaughter recite spelling words with confidence. But slowly, I was asked to eat earlier or later. We're trying a new family routine, my daughter-in-law explained. It's nothing personal, just easier with the kids. I nodded. From then on, I ate in the kitchen while they set the dining table. A paper plate, a quiet corner. My portion, carefully measured and left in the microwave, wrapped in plastic wrap like a leftover. One evening, my granddaughter peeked in and asked, "Grandma, why don't you eat with us anymore?" Before I could answer, her mother called from the hallway, "Sweetheart, Grandma likes watching her shows during dinner. She prefers it that way." I opened my mouth to speak, then closed it. What would I say? That I missed being part of the conversation? That the silence around my dinner plate grew heavier with each bite? So I smiled, took a bite, nodded, and kept chewing. I became a shadow. I cleaned the kitchen when no one asked me to. I folded towels before they even made it to the laundry room. I raked leaves in the autumn and swept the porch when the wind scattered dust across the welcome mat. I thought, maybe if I stayed useful, they would remember. But usefulness is not the same as belonging. One afternoon, I walked past the dining room and heard laughter. My daughter-in-law, her sister, and a few friends gathered for coffee. I was on my way to the laundry room, carrying a basket of damp towels, when I caught a piece of their conversation. "So what's it like living with your mother-in-law full-time?" one of the women asked. Light-hearted teasing. My daughter-in-law chuckled. "Honestly, it's like having a roommate who doesn't pay rent and rearranges your pantry. She's sweet, but I mean, let's be real. She's basically a live-in guest we can't charge. The others laughed. It was a joke. I know it was meant to be light, but it landed like a slap. A living guest. That's all I was. Not family, not a mother, not a grandmother. A guest, without rent, without room, without reason to complain. I stood there a moment longer, holding the basket, the towel on top still warm from the dryer. Then I turned, went back to the basement, and folded every piece with care. That night, I sat on the edge of the pull-out couch and looked around the room. The cement walls, the low ceiling, the single light. My life had shrunk to this: an unfinished basement, a microwave dinner, and the echo of my name used like an obligation. I remembered something William once told me, years ago, when the school board tried to push me into early retirement. You can let them make you small, he said, or you can remind them, you built the building they're standing in. I had built this. Not just the house, but the people inside it. The child I had raised, the family I had supported, the foundation they walked on every single day. I had given everything, and still, I had been made smaller than the smallest guest. But I did not cry. I did not storm upstairs or confront them or beg for a seat at the table. I simply turned off the lamp, and in the dark, I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because something deep inside me, the quietest, strongest part, had just woken up. It happened on a Tuesday. I was peeling apples in the kitchen, my hands moving slow and steady, the way they do when your fingers know a task better than your mind does. The knife sliced in soft arcs, the peels curling like ribbon into the bowl. I had promised my granddaughter an apple pie. She loved it warm, with a scoop of vanilla ice cream on top. I had just finished the third apple when I heard footsteps behind me. It was Thomas and his wife. Both of them. Together. I turned and smiled. Pie's in progress, I said lightly. They did not smile back. Mom, Thomas said, his voice measured, rehearsed. Can we talk for a moment? I set the knife down, wiped my hands on a dish towel, followed them into the living room. The couch was too big for the room. The fireplace flickered on even though it was almost spring. Everything smelled like lemon cleaner, and something else I couldn't name. Something tight, cold. They sat down. I stood. Thomas cleared his throat. We've been thinking, and we believe it might be time for you to rest. Properly. I tilted my head. Rest? He looked at his wife. She jumped in. The house is getting crowded, Mom. The kids are growing. We need more space. You know how chaotic it is. And it's just not healthy for anyone right now. I looked between them, their hands folded neatly, their expressions too still. So she continued. We found a wonderful assisted living center. It's just outside Boulder. Clean, friendly staff. We already submitted the application. They have a room ready. I said nothing. She kept going. They serve 3 hot meals a day. They have bingo nights and Bible study. It's not a nursing home. It's a community. You'll have your own space and privacy. Privacy, like a stray dog behind a gate. Thomas nodded, as if finalizing a transaction. It's best for everyone, Mum. You deserve care. Real care. And we need to be able to breathe again. Breathe. As if my presence had choked the air from their lungs. I did not scream. I did not beg. I looked at my son, my only child, and wondered if he remembered the nights I stayed awake when he had night terrors. If he remembered the time I pawned my wedding ring to buy his band uniform. His eyes did not meet mine. When? I asked. This afternoon, his wife said briskly. They're sending a car. A car. Like I was a package being picked up, like this was Amazon Returns. I see, I said. I walked downstairs to the basement and began to pack. Not much to take. A few cardigans, a framed photo of William, my Bible, a wool blanket I'd knitted during the long Colorado winters, and I slipped the envelope into the side pocket of my suitcase, tucked beneath a pair of socks. They never asked about the deed. They had assumed it was theirs. The house was theirs. But the land. Oh, the land still whispered my name in ink. Upstairs, I heard laughter. My granddaughter giggling at a video. My grandson arguing about video game time. No one came down to help me pack. By the time the Uber arrived, I was waiting at the curb. A black sedan. Clean. Quiet. The driver stepped out and opened the door. "Are you Root?" I nodded. Thomas and his wife stood in the doorway, but did not approach. My son gave a small wave, like I was heading out on holiday. His wife wrapped an arm around his waist and whispered something I couldn't hear. My grandchildren were not even home. They had practice, or homework, or nothing at all to say. I stepped into the car. The door closed with a gentle click. The driver pulled away. I did not look back. There was nothing left behind me worth seeing. The ride was long. The trees blurred past. The sky hung low and wide, gray and endless. I folded my hands in my lap and exhaled. I had not cried. I would not cry. Some endings are not loud. They are just final. The nursing home in Boulder was quiet, the kind of quiet that does not comfort. It presses on your chest like a pillow, too heavy to move. The meals came on time. The nurses were kind, or at least practiced in the art of kindness. There were bingo nights, as promised, Bible study on Wednesdays. But no one looked you in the eye for too long. Everyone walked with slippers that barely touched the floor, as if trying not to wake a dream we were all trapped in. I spent most of my days by the window. A small chair, a side table. My cup of tea went cold often, but I sipped it anyway. I had brought one suitcase. That was all I needed. In that suitcase was the folder that held the deed. I had kept it all these years, not for power, not for pride, just for record, in case someone ever needed to know where everything began. And now, someone did. I took it out one afternoon when the sky turned that soft, aching blue Colorado does so well. I laid the pages out on the table, smoothed the creases, and read every word. My name, my husband's, the date of sale, the legal parcel number, the notarized signature, the line that said owner of record. And there it was. Still me. Not them. Not their LLC. Not their mortgage company. Not their new address label on Amazon. Me. I had never transferred the title. They had never asked. Too busy picking backsplash tiles and arguing over garage shelving, they thought. Because they had built something, it meant they owned everything beneath it. But they had built a house on land that was not theirs, and land is power. I picked up the phone and called Gerald. Gerald Washington had been our family attorney for years, back when lawyers were paid in pies and handshakes. He had retired, officially, but I knew better. Men like Gerald don't retire. They wait for justice to wake them back up. "Ruth," he said, his voice still strong despite the static. "Well, I'll be damned. What are you calling from? Heaven or prison?" "Neither," I said, "but I might be the ghost in someone's future, if you help me." I explained everything: the sale, the house, the treatment, the exile. And then I said the line I'd been rehearsing in my head for weeks. I want to revoke permission. Legally, quietly, no screaming, no scandal, just paper. He laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was good. "You always were 3 steps ahead of the rest of us," he said. "I'll handle it personally." Within a week, the new paperwork was filed, the notice was written, the envelope was sealed, They would find it in their mailbox soon, tucked between credit card offers and coupon books. Just a simple letter, no venom, just fact. That the land beneath their home no longer welcomed them, and the woman they had cast out, she was still standing. The notice went out on a Wednesday. No signature needed. Just a stamped envelope with a clear message. 30 days to vacate. Legal. Final. Binding. It was not written with anger. I chose every word carefully. No venom, no threat. Just truth. My lawyer sent it via certified mail, and I knew the moment they received it. The phone rang 5 times that afternoon. I didn't answer. The 6th time, it stopped mid-ring. Then silence. Then screaming. Not in my home. God, no. I was miles away by then, in my own peace. But in theirs? My daughter-in-law called me names I will not repeat. Words that bounced off me like rain on stone. She called me a traitor, a thief, a manipulator. She called the police. The officer showed up at her door, looked at the paperwork, called Gerald, my lawyer. He had already prepared a statement. She owns the land, he said, calm and clear. They built the house, yes, but they did it on her property. That gives her every legal right to revoke access. Is she trying to sell the property? The officer asked. No, Gerald replied. She's just removing people who were never granted legal right to occupy it. That was the end of that. I don't know how long they cried, or yelled, or threw things. I was not there. But I heard about the family meeting they held. Neighbors told me. The blinds were shut, the voices loud, the tension visible from the sidewalk. It was the kind of chaos you could feel through the walls. And me? I was sipping chamomile tea on my porch, watching the wind move through my garden. No revenge, no gloating, just peace. Because for the first time in years, I was not the one trying to hold it all together. I was not the maid, the babysitter, the unpaid guest. I was the owner. And they, those who told me I had done enough, who cast me out without a second thought, they were being reminded, quietly, legally, irrefutably, that I'd never stop mattering. They gave me silence. I gave them notice. The house stood empty for 3 weeks. When I walked through the front door, the silence was different. It was not the sharp, heavy kind I had once endured. It was clean, open, like the air had been cleared of something toxic. No shouting, no heavy footsteps above my room, no slamming cabinets or whispered complaints, just peace. I didn't bring much with me. A few boxes, my books, the same velvet pouch that held my wedding ring, and the deed, now folded away for good. The house was no longer a place of rejection. It was mine, entirely, quietly, mine. I started with the kitchen. I scrubbed it top to bottom, wiping away grease, dust, and memory. I donated the decor, signs that said blessed and gather, to a thrift store downtown. I didn't need reminders. I knew what had been lost. I also knew what I was building now, something new. It came to me slowly, first in a dream, then in a letter from a friend at the nursing home. A woman named Helen had written, "If you ever find yourself alone, but not lonely, I'd love to visit. I miss tea that doesn't taste like metal." That letter stayed on my fridge. The next one came from Gloria, then Marie, then from a man named Lyle, whose wife had passed 2 winters ago. People who had given all they had to their children, their churches, their communities, and had been left with silence in return. I thought of them as I cleared out the living room. I rearranged the space, not as a family room, but a gathering space. I replaced the sectional couch with wooden chairs. I brought out the tablecloths I had sewn years ago. I put a kettle on the stove and a vase of fresh-cut daffodils by the window. I printed a flyer at the library and pinned it to the board by the grocery store. Miss Ruth's house, tea talk, and time for us Thursdays at 2 p.m. Women 60 plus welcome. No RSVP, just come. The first week, 2 women came. By week 4, there were 11. We sat in a circle, teacups in hand. No agenda, no timer. Just stories, grief, laughter. The things we were never allowed to say when we were too busy being useful. They told me I had given them something they forgot how to ask for: space. They started calling me Miss Ruth of the Rockies. I never asked for the title. It just happened. One of the ladies, Doris, said it with a smile after she finished reciting a poem she had written in secret. "Miss Ruth," she said, "you didn't just open your door. You opened our dignity." The name stuck. Soon, Miss Ruth's house became more than Thursdays. We started book circles, gardening Saturdays, a potluck on the last Sunday of every month. The garage became a craft room. The guest bedroom turned into a quiet space with a rocking chair and prayer books. The backyard, once overgrown, was now a small garden with herbs, tomatoes, and a bench beneath a blooming cherry tree. We planted it together. Every morning I woke before the sun, stepped outside barefoot, and watered the garden. The soil was soft, rich. Things grew easily here. I smiled at the lavender, at the basil, at the roses that kept coming back, no matter how cold the winter. I thought of Thomas once, maybe twice, a week, not with bitterness, not with anger, just awareness, like a scar you forget until it aches in the rain. He had chosen silence, but I had chosen something else. A new family. Not by blood, but by presence, by mutual respect, by kindness. We were women who had been shoved into corners and closets, who were told, "You've done enough," as if that meant we had nothing left to give. And yet, here we were, giving again. Not because we had to, but because no one could stop us anymore. I sat on the porch one evening, the sky awash of purples and pinks. Gloria was knitting beside me. Lyle had stopped by to fix the screen door. Helen was inside baking her famous lemon bars. And I whispered, to no one in particular, "You don't need blood to know who your family is." The wind carried it, and the house, my house, held it. The text came at 6:42 in the morning. I was on the porch, the steam rising from my coffee. The air still held that crisp bite that tells you spring is here. But the mountain's memory of winter hasn't faded yet. Birds were just starting their morning chorus, and the dew clung to the rosemary bush I'd planted near the steps. My phone buzzed once, just once. I almost didn't look, but something made me reach for it. It was from Thomas. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was stupid. I see that now. Will you put me back in the will?" No greeting, no warmth, just a plea, half covered in guilt, half soaked in desperation. I read it twice, and then I sat back and watched the sky turn gold. I did not respond immediately. I let the morning pass in its own time. I watered the plants. I tidied the reading room. I sorted some of the new letters from our Thursday group. At noon, I finally wrote back, just one line. A debt must be paid before a conversation can begin. I did not send anything more, not because I wanted to be cruel, but because, after everything. Here is the final passage of your moving narrative, translated into elegant British English, with deliberate semicolon pacing, crafted for voice narration with depth, rhythm, and emotional resonance, suitable for 11 Labs or dramatic reading. After the silence, the exile, the insult, the betrayal, I owed myself something more than forgiveness on command. I owed myself clarity. He owed me recognition, not just of my value, but of my endurance, my patience, my silence, my strength. And I was done giving all those things away for free. He never replied, but I imagine he read it more than once, just as I had read his. Maybe someday he will understand. People ask me now if I regret it, kicking my son out, taking back what was mine, turning my old home into a gathering place for women who had nowhere else to be. And I tell them this: I do not regret reclaiming what I built. I do not regret reminding them that the woman they shoved aside was the one who paid the first brick, signed the first paper, dreamed the first dream. They said I had lived too long, but they forgot. I am the reason that house did not fall apart long ago. I patched its roof with retirement checks. I mopped its floors when no one asked. I held its door open to every guest they cared more for than me. I was and when it was time, I did not use fire, I used paper. That house may have been filled with their things, but the land knew my name, and the law did too. Now, I live in a place where I'm not a guest in my own life, the Olive Heart. That is what we call it now. A small sunlit house, tucked between pine trees and open sky. It is quiet, but not lonely. Women come and go. We host poetry nights, potlucks, birthday teas for ladies who no longer get phone calls from their kids, but get hugs from each other. Here, we mend things together. Not just quilts, but hearts, spirits. Every Thursday, we open the windows wide and let the light in. We sit in circles, we speak our names, and we tell the truths that were too heavy for our kitchens and living rooms. I do not lead them. I just sit among them. One of them. Not louder, just finally heard. Last month, a woman named Evelyn said, "I used to think the worst part of growing old was being invisible, but now I see the worst part was being visible only when they needed something." We all nodded. We knew. But now, we are visible for who we are, not what we can do. Sometimes, when I water the herbs in the back garden, I think of Thomas. Not with hate, not with longing, just stillness. I remember him as a child, his small hand holding mine on the first day of school. I remember his face when he rode his first bike, when he cried after his father's funeral, when he told me he and his wife were expecting. Those are the pieces I keep. But I do not keep the silence. I do not keep the betrayal. Those things I buried in the same earth where I now grow lavender and peace lilies. This home, this life is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is quiet justice, the kind that blooms slowly but never wilts. And if someone ever knocks on my door again, someone looking for kindness, not charity, for connection, not apology, I will let them in, but only if they come with honesty, because I have learned kindness is not weakness, it is choice. And now, finally, I choose it for myself. And so, that is the story of a woman they said had done enough, of a house built on forgotten sacrifice, of a silence so thick it could have buried her. But she rose, not in anger, not in vengeance, though both would have been justified. She rose in something far more powerful, clarity. If you have ever been the one who gave and gave, until your name was no longer spoken with love, but with inconvenience, if you have ever been pushed to the corner of your own family, if you have ever been told you've done enough when all you wanted was to be remembered, not repaid, then you know. You know what it means to sit in a room you helped pay for and feel like an intruder. You know what it means to hold your tongue when your heart is screaming. You know what it means to watch the people you raised become strangers. But I want you to remember this. You are not invisible. You are not too much. You are not too old to matter. And you are never, ever without power. Revenge does not always come with fire. Sometimes it comes with a deed and a deadline, with a signature, with the quiet click of a door locking behind you. For the last time. And what waits on the other side is not bitterness. It is rebirth. Hear it, Grandma. True stories. These are not tales made for pity. They are not bedtime fables, not soft memories dipped in nostalgia. They are truths, told aloud, often for the first time. From the quietest woman in the room, the one you overlooked at dinner, the one you rolled your eyes at when she said too much, the one you forgot had a past that roared. Well, now she is speaking, and I promise you this, when a grandma speaks, the world listens. So, if you believe in justice that takes its time, if you believe in dignity that does not need an audience, if you believe in memory as a form of power, then I invite you, subscribe to this channel, not just to hear more stories like this, but to remember the women in your life who have lived through what they never spoke. Click subscribe, turn on the bell, and stay with us, here at Grandma. True stories, where silence becomes strength and age becomes armor. Because the past isn't gone. It's just finally ready to be heard.